Does the city have resources to further invest in home repair? Would you go other places to find some of that money?
Yes, and yes. The city has resources, and the city will have to prioritize the resources that it does have, but we will also have to build coalitions and partnerships, and I've done that. That's how I've been so successful at THAW. I've built relationships with nonprofits. I've built relationships with philanthropy. I'm a former trustee of the board for the Kresge Foundation, so I know philanthropy well and know how to work with them to help fill some of the gaps.
So, Detroit finalized its $3 billion with a B dollar
Mhm.
budget. What was the size of the budget at THAW?
20 million, 20 to 25 million. The lowest was about 17 million while I was there. The highest was about 26 million. And like most nonprofits, it varied from year to year.
Mhm. The reason I ask, I mean, obviously that's a much larger the city is a
Absolutely.
much larger
Mhm.
organization, right?
Yeah.
And you talked about your executive experience, your CEO experience.
Mhm.
I'm curious about who you're gonna bring in to
Mm.
help you do this. You know, the mayor has a big job, but it's not solely on their shoulders.
Right.
There's a cabinet, there's department heads.
Mhm.
Mayor Duggan brought on a lot of people that he had kind of crossed paths with, worked under him in his various roles before
Mhm.
becoming the mayor at the Detroit Medical Center and at the county and some of the other jobs that he did.
Yes.
Do you have kind of a bench of people that you're going to be bringing in? Do you plan to keep a lot of continuity there with his administration staff? How would you kind of approach that?
It'll be a combination of both. There are people in the Duggan administration that are highly talented and are doing a good job. Those people I would work to keep. I know some of them are leaving as we speak,
Yeah.
so hopefully everybody, who is highly talented won't leave before the next mayor comes in, which I hope to be me. But also, over my time, I have built up really strong relationships in nonprofit, across government, across philanthropy. The benefit of having worked with the corporate community and the philanthropy community and so many nonprofits is that I've worked with a lot of highly talented people that some of them I'm tapping as I work through my policies and my platform for this race, but also I tap them if the voters decide I should be our next mayor.
Mhm. Are there particular departments that you see as being like more critical than others?
Wow. So the finance and budget departments are absolutely critical because that's where it all starts and ends,
Mhm.
right? So making sure that we continue our revenue conferences, making sure that we continue our responsible fiscal practices, which have enabled us to increase our credit ratings, will be very important. So, yes, that is critical. Another department that I think is critical that the city figures out and makes more efficient is building safety and engineering.
Mhm.
It's right now about 77 steps to start a new business in the city of Detroit, which makes that's a real barrier to entry. If we want to be a city that is business friendly and we say we want to attract investment and innovation and jobs, we have to make it easier to do that. So, our licensing process, the permitting process for businesses and for residents. When I talk to residents, if you're having your kitchen remodeled, you have to have 3 inspectors. You got to take off work 3 times
Mhm.
for them to inspect your kitchen. That's not the way it should be. If 3 inspectors could show up at the same time, why wouldn't we make it easier for our residents and businesses?
On the inspection point, the city has made some changes in the last year to its rental inspection
Mhm.
process for housing,
Yes.
basically to streamline that because there was a huge checklist and it ultimately did not really improve the number of rental properties that were coming into compliance with the
Right.
city. They found that, punishing people going through the kind of enforcement mechanism wasn't
Right.
working. So let's try to make it easier and work with.
That's right.
Um, I'm imagining there's probably some crossover with your work at THAW as well,
Mhm.
seeing homes in substandard conditions.
Absolutely.
Um, what would you do to help improve conditions of the housing in the city,
Mhm.
for renters in particular?
And first, I want to say I think that's a great example of the importance between understanding when you're writing a law and when you have to execute, right, and manage based on that law,
What is the
the
outcome of the
difference.
policy? Yeah.
Right, that's right. And having a rental registration policy that encourages people not to register their property or makes it very hard for people to be in compliance is not the answer, right? And you have unintended consequences because we can inspect homes that we don't know are being rented. So, yes, I've seen that at THAW, and we have to find the balance and make sure that homes are safe, that they continue to be affordable, but the living conditions. If we're charging people to live in a home, they have to be the living conditions have to be healthy, and it's gotta be safe for families, seniors, and kids.
Mm. You had mentioned earlier you're hoping that there's not a complete exodus of, of Duggan officials. Uh, do you see yourself as bringing some continuity between yourself and the Duggan administration? A lot of the folks that are in this race have talked about how he's done a good job, and we want to keep some of those things continuing, but
Mhm.
also they have their own vision for things. Where do you kind of fall along that? How much continuity are you trying to pitch to Detroiters of what we've seen over the last 10+ years under him?
I think I bring stability. And that is the continuity. At the end of the day, what people want, whether it's residents or businesses, people want stability. And I think that I bring stability and I've brought stability to every place I've been. On council, that was one of the things people said, you're a calm, stable voice at the table, you're a rational, whatever the adjective was at THAW. And I would do the same thing as mayor. I would bring stability, and there are some things that I wouldn't change, but of course, there are things that I would change.
When you were on the city council, it was a much different time for the city,
Yes.
much different time for the city's finances. You guys had to make some really tough
Mhm.
calls. Went back and read the coverage of the time, and there were some really harsh cuts in some of the Mayor Bing budgets that you were presented with at the time and had to make decisions on.
Mhm.
Um, just take us back to that time a little bit. Explain to us, what it was like to try to make things run the way that they should with limited resources. And I don't know, how far have we really come since then?
Oh, we've come a very long way, but things are still much more fragile than I think people realize. So we've definitely come a long way. Before the bankruptcy, we were spending 60 cents of every dollar on debt. Before we paid a cop, before we cut the grass, before we shoveled the snow, that was just not, sustainable. So we've come a long way past that, but the next mayor is gonna have some challenges that our current mayor didn't have. We don't have a zero balance sheet anymore. Pension payments are coming due. Grand bargain payments are going away. The $949 million dollars that came to the city from in CARES and opera dollars won't be there, but positions will be there. Programs will be there that were created with those dollars, and the next mayor will have to figure it all out.